The house was too quiet that October morning, the kind of silence that presses against your chest, heavy with secrets you're not ready to face. I stood in my kitchen, staring at the phone in my hand, my thumb hovering over the call button. My heart ached with a familiar pang, the kind only a mother knows when she's about to give everything to a child who might not deserve it. I had just transferred $320,000 to my son Ryan's account, every penny of my savings, because he said his wife Elise was pregnant. I wanted to believe him. I needed to. But deep down, a cold whisper told me I was walking into a trap. I pressed call, my voice soft but steady. "Ryan, I sent the money. Make sure Elise and the baby are taken care of." His reply came too smooth, too bright. "Of course, Mom. We'll be fine. I'm going to be a dad now, you know. Responsibilities." I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. Before I could say more, he cut me off. "Gotta run, lots going on." I opened my mouth to say I loved him, but then I heard her. Elise's voice slithered through the phone, sharp and smug. Finally, the old woman sent the money. My breath stopped. Ryan didn't defend me. Instead, he laughed, a cold, dry sound that cracked something inside me. "Took long enough," he said. "Had to fake a pregnancy to get it." My fingers tightened around the phone, knuckles white, my vision blurring with tears I refused to let fall. They thought I'd hung up, but I heard it all, her giggle, his scoff, their casual plans to spend my life savings. I stood frozen in my living room, the same room where I'd read Ryan bedtime stories, bandaged his scraped knees, and believed in him despite every reckless choice. Now I saw the truth. I was just a means to an end. The betrayal wasn't new. It was just sharper this time, a blade honed by years of excuses I'd made for him. I hung up, the silence in the house suffocating, like the walls were laughing at my naivety. For an hour, I stood there, clutching the phone, staring at nothing, the weight of his words sinking in. Ryan had stopped visiting after marrying Elise, his calls growing rare, his excuses flimsier. I told myself he was busy, that marriage and a baby would change him. But it was all a lie, and I'd fallen for it because I wanted to believe in the boy I raised. 2 days later, they showed up at my door, unannounced, their smiles too wide, too practiced. I opened it, masking the ache in my chest. "Ryan," I said softly, "what brings you here?" He grinned like everything was normal, shoving a plastic bag into my hands. "Brought you some supplements, Mom. Gotta keep you healthy." Elise chimed in, her voice sticky sweet. "We've been thinking about you, Helen. Ryan talks about you all the time." They were good. I'll give them that polished, rehearsed, convincing. But I knew the truth now. I smiled, patting Ryan's arm. Just the thought means the world. They stepped inside, settling onto my couch like they owned it, complimenting the house, calling it cozy. It didn't take long for the real reason to slip out. "The apartment's cramped," Ryan said casually. "With Elise pregnant, it's not ideal." Elise sighed dramatically. "It's not healthy for me, or the baby." They weren't just visiting, they were staking a claim. My house, an old 2-story on a quiet street, was worth over $1 million. Ryan grew up here. He knew its value. Now they wanted it. I nodded faintly, watching them like a hawk. "Of course, you can stay," I said, my voice soft. Their eyes lit up, surprised I didn't resist. Then Ryan leaned in, his tone careful. "Since we're staying, maybe it makes sense to put the house in my name. Taxes, maintenance, you know." Elise echoed him, her voice dripping with fake affection. "We just want you to relax, Helen." I smiled, sweet as ever. "Sure." They blinked, stunned by how easy it was. I let them think they'd won, but inside, I was done playing their game. I was watching, waiting, and curious to see how far they'd push. The air in the house shifted the moment they moved in. Not the furniture, but the feeling. It was like someone was always watching, even when their backs were turned. By the second day, Elise was already playing the perfect daughter-in-law, cornering me in the kitchen while I peeled apples for a pie. "So, how's the house transfer coming?" she asked, her smile tight, like she was discussing the weather. I paused, slicing an apple clean through. Still needs a few days. These things are complicated. Her smile stiffened, but she laughed it off. No rush, we're patient. They weren't, but they had to be for now. The house was still mine. Their act kicked into overdrive after that. Elise cooked breakfast. Ryan vacuumed. Things they'd never done before. It was a performance, and I played along, smiling, laughing, all while watching their tells. Ryan's fake chuckle, Elise's too smooth words. I knew them better than they thought. Then, late one night, I couldn't sleep, the ache of betrayal keeping me awake. I wandered toward the living room for a book, but stopped short. Voices, low and sharp, came from behind the door. I pressed my ear to the wood, my heartbeat loud in my ears. As soon as she signs the house over, Ryan whispered, we kick her out. Elise giggled, her voice cold. And by then her savings will be ours. Bye-bye, Helen. Ryan scoffed. She doesn't mean a damn thing to me. Never has. Dead weight. My chest tightened, my ribs caving in. I'd known pain, but hearing my son, my boy, say that, it was a fresh kind of hurt. I stepped back, the truth settling like ice in my bones. I'd been enabling him for years, mistaking it for love. But no more. The next morning, I brewed coffee, set the table, and played my part. Elise cooed about her fake pregnancy. Ryan praised my cooking. But all I heard was a ticking clock. That night, I heard the back door creak open at 2 a.m. frowning. I slipped out of bed, pulling on my robe. The door was ajar, cool air drifting in. I stepped outside, my bare feet cold on the deck. Baxter. I whispered, a reflex. But Baxter, my loyal golden retriever, was long gone. The yard was empty, his corner, where his blanket and toys always sat, cleaned out. My stomach dropped. At breakfast, I confronted Ryan. Where's Baxter? He waved a hand, barely looking up from his phone. Dropped him off somewhere. Old Mutt's always in the way. My voice cracked. You what? He shrugged, biting into his toast. You're 60, Mom. You shouldn't be dealing with a dog. I did you a favor. Elise smirked. Honestly, Helen, you should thank him. Something in me snapped, but I didn't scream. I smiled, cold and controlled. They thought they were clever, but they'd just lit a fire. I wasn't their victim anymore. I was their reckoning. The kitchen smelled of warm bread and coffee, but the comfort was a lie. I stood at the counter, stirring soup, my hands steady but my mind racing. Ryan and Elise thought they had me cornered, but they didn't know I'd stopped playing their game. I'd spent years cleaning up Ryan's messes, gambling debts, failed schemes, broken promises, but this time he'd gone too far. Taking Baxter, my loyal companion of 12 years, wasn't just cruel. It was a line crossed, a door slammed shut. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was angry, and that anger sharpened my every move. I started small, subtle. I cooked their favorite meals, macaroni and cheese, creamy soups, buttery casseroles. Dishes that felt like love but were meant to slow them down. Heavy food makes you lazy, foggy, careless. Each bite they took dulled their edges, and I watched, quiet as a shadow, planning my next step. They ate like kings, never suspecting the trap I was weaving. This is so good, Mom, Ryan mumbled, shoveling mashed potatoes into his mouth. Elise nodded, her eyes half closed as she sipped her soup. You're too good to us, Helen. I smiled, pushing the bread basket closer. Eat up. You both look tired. They didn't see the steel behind my smile. They thought I was still the soft, trusting mother who'd hand over everything. But I was done giving. One afternoon, while they napped on the couch, I spotted Ryan's laptop open, its screen glowing faintly. I wasn't the snooping type, but something pulled me closer. My heart sank as I read the search history. How to take out life insurance on a family member, accidental death loopholes, reassigning a trust after someone dies. My stomach twisted. This wasn't just about the house or the money. They wanted me gone, erased. I closed the laptop, my hands trembling, but my resolve hardening. I drove to the insurance office that same day, my purse clutched tight. The receptionist, a young man with slick hair, tapped at his computer. "Yes, Ms. Monroe, there's a policy under your name. Premium tier, one of our biggest plans." I gripped the counter. "Who took it out?" He glanced at the screen. "Your son, Ryan Monroe." Of course. Ryan never did anything small. If he was going to betray me, he'd make sure the payout was worth it. I left with a copy of the policy, my mind a storm of clarity. They weren't just stealing my home, they were planning my end. Back home, Ryan greeted me with fake warmth, grabbing my grocery bags. "You look tired, Mom. Rough day." I forced a smile. "Just errands." Elise looped her arm through mine, her voice syrupy. "We were thinking a little trip might cheer you up. Somewhere peaceful, like Ridgewood National Forest. Fresh air, light hiking." I almost laughed. Ridgewood, with its cliffs and unmarked trails, was where people vanished. They thought I didn't know, but I'd hiked those woods for years after Baxter died, learning every path, every danger. I'd joined a mountaineering club, not for fun, but to feel strong again. They thought they were leading me into a trap, but I knew the forest better than they ever would. "Sounds lovely," I said, my voice steady. "I'll go." Their eyes lit up, surprised at how easy I made it. Elise smiled wide. "Great. Pack tonight. We leave early." I nodded, heading to my room. Behind the locked door, I packed carefully, hiking boots, a jacket, a first aid kit, and hidden in my backpack's lining, the sedatives I'd found in their kitchen stash. They thought they were clever, but I was steps ahead. The drive to Ridgewood was tense, the air thick with their unspoken plans. Ryan hummed to the radio, his knuckles tight on the wheel. Elise scrolled her phone, her knee bouncing nervously. I stared out the window, the forest looming closer, its jagged peaks promising danger. They thought they were in control, but I was ready to turn their game against them. At the trailhead, I played the part, stretching slowly, wincing like my knees ached. Ryan chuckled. "We'll take it easy, Mom." Elise handed me an electrolyte drink, her smile too sweet. "Stay hydrated, Helen." I took it, unscrewing the cap, but not drinking. I'd seen their sedatives, smelled the faint chemical in the bottle. Instead, I pulled out energy bars from my bag. "Long hike. You too need fuel." They tore into them, hungry and careless, not noticing the faint marks where I'd resealed the wrappers. I'd used their own sedatives against them, mixed into the bars. 10 minutes later, Ryan's eyes drooped, his steps sluggish. Elise rubbed her temples, swaying. "What the hell?" Ryan slurred, sinking to his knees. Elise collapsed, her face pale. I stood, brushing dirt from my pants. "Problem?" I asked, my voice calm. Elise's eyes widened, panic cutting through her haze. "What did you do?" "Same thing you planned for me," I replied. "Only I got there first." Ryan tried to stand, his limbs weak. "Mom, come on, we're family." I tilted my head, my voice cold. "Funny how you only say that when you need something." I stepped past them, the forest quiet around us. The cliffs loomed nearby, the valley stretching below. "You wanted me gone," I said, glancing back. "But this forest doesn't care who you are. It'll take anyone unprepared." Their weak protests faded as I walked away, following the ridge trail I knew by heart. The sun dipped lower, shadows stretching across the ground. I didn't look back. They'd set the trap, but they'd fallen into mine. The descent was peaceful, the crunch of leaves under my boots the only sound. I reached the parking lot as the sky turned lavender, my car waiting in the quiet. I climbed in, locked the doors, and sat for a moment, the weight of what I'd done settling in. I wasn't scared anymore. I was free. But just as I started the engine, a faint voice broke the silence. "Help over here." My heart skipped. I followed the sound, pushing through bushes until I found him. A man, about my age, lying on the forest floor, his leg twisted, his face pale with pain. "Don't move!" I said, kneeling beside him. He managed a weak smile. Figured that out already. His face was familiar, like someone I'd seen on the news. I called emergency services, relaying our location, and stayed with him, pressing a cloth to a gash on his forehead. "Name's Marcus," he said, his voice strained. "Marcus Grant." My breath caught. Marcus Grant, of Grant Enterprises, the company Ryan had chased for years. "You're lucky I found you," I said, keeping my voice steady. He chuckled weakly. "Or maybe you're lucky." The paramedics arrived, and I helped them lift him onto a stretcher. Before they wheeled him away, he squeezed my hand. "If there's ever anything I can do, you saved my life." I followed the ambulance to the hospital, not sure why, but something told me to stay. Hours later, when Marcus woke, he asked for me. "You stayed," he said, his eyes soft. "Figured it's rude to leave someone stranded twice in one day," I replied. He laughed, hoarse but real. "You're something else, Helen." I left the hospital under a starlit sky, Marcus's words lingering. I didn't know it then, but that chance encounter was about to change everything. The hospital's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, the sterile smell of antiseptic clinging to the air. I sat in the waiting room, my hands folded in my lap, the events of the forest still pulsing through me. I hadn't planned on saving Marcus Grant, but life has a way of throwing you curves when you least expect it. His face, pale, pained but grateful, stayed with me, a sharp contrast to the cold betrayal I'd left behind on that ridge. I could still hear Ryan's slurred pleas, Elise's panicked gasps, but I pushed them down. They weren't my problem anymore. My phone stayed silent, no word from them, and I wasn't in a rush to check. The doctor finally emerged, clipboard in hand. "He's stable," she said, her voice calm. "You can see him if you'd like." I nodded, following her to Marcus's room. He looked smaller in the hospital bed, his leg in a cast, but his eyes were sharp, meeting mine with a quiet warmth. "You didn't have to stay," he said, his voice rough but kind. I shrugged, offering a faint smile. Had nowhere else to be. We talked for a while, light things, weather, the hospital food, the way the nurses moved like they were on a mission. He didn't ask about my life, and I didn't offer. But when I stood to leave, he grabbed my hand, gently. "I meant what I said, Helen. Anything you need, you call me." I nodded, slipping out before the moment got heavy. Back home, the house felt different, quieter but not empty. I brewed tea, the steam curling under my nose, and sat at the kitchen table, the silence wrapping around me like a blanket. 3 days passed before my phone rang. Ryan's name flashed on the screen, and my stomach tightened. I let it ring, once, twice, then picked up, my voice light. "Hey, sweetheart." His voice was raw, broken. "Mom, we need you to come get us." I traced the rim of my teacup, keeping my tone even. "Where are you?" A pause, then his words spilled out, shaky. "We got lost. Made it to the trailhead, but the car battery's dead. Phone's died too. We slept in the car." I bit my cheek to hide a smirk. One night in the cold, and they were already crumbling. "Rough night," I said, faking sympathy. "Please, can you come?" he begged, his voice small. I let the silence stretch, just enough to make him squirm. "I'll be there," I said finally. When I pulled into the parking lot, they looked like ghosts. Ryan slumped against the car, Elise curled on the curb, her perfect facade smudged with dirt. They climbed into my car without a word, the air thick with their defeat. At home, they collapsed onto the couch, too tired to act. I cooked them dinner, rich, heavy, the same indulgent meals I'd been feeding them. Ryan devoured his plate, Elise picking at hers, her eyes distant. "Thanks, Mom," Ryan mumbled, almost sincere. I smiled, unreadable. "Anything for you." The next few days, their desperation grew, a crack in their polished act. They thought they'd won the house, but I saw the fear in their eyes, the uncertainty. I kept cooking, kept smiling, kept sharpening my plan. One afternoon, while folding laundry, I noticed Ryan's laptop open again. My heart skipped as I scanned the screen. A drafted email, cold and calculated. Subject: change of trust beneficiary. Please expedite reassigning the trust to Elise Monroe upon Helen Monroe's passing. My blood ran cold. They weren't slowing down. They were speeding up, planning to erase me completely. I closed the laptop, my pulse steady. I drove to a real estate attorney that morning, papers tucked under my arm. I disguised the documents as a house transfer, handing them to Ryan later with a calm smile. "Consider it a gift," I said. His eyes lit up, Elise practically skipping as they tore through the pages. But when they reached the final page, Elise's smile faltered. "What's this?" she snapped, reading the fine print. "For display purposes only. Not legally binding." Ryan's face drained of color. "You tricked us." Elise hissed, her voice sharp. I tilted my head, my voice soft. "No, you tricked yourselves. You were so busy dreaming of my money. You didn't read the contract." Ryan shoved the papers at me, his voice breaking. "I'm your son. How could you?" I leaned in, my tone gentle but firm. "You stopped being my son when you planned to take everything I had." The room went quiet, their shock palpable. Elise recovered first, her voice icy. "We let you stay out of kindness. When are you moving out?" I blinked, feigning hurt. "Move out? Where would I go?" Ryan shrugged, avoiding my eyes. "There's rentals. You'll figure it out." I nodded, playing the part. "Maybe I'll stay a bit longer. I cook, clean, I won't be trouble." Elise's eyes narrowed, but she waved a hand. "Fine. Stay. At least you're useful." They thought they'd won, but I was still in control. Their masks slipped after that. Elise stopped pretending to be sweet, barking orders like I was a servant. "Get me water," she snapped one day, tapping her nails on the table. I set a glass down, the water ice cold. She grimaced. "This is warm. Are you trying to burn me?" I smiled tightly. "Sorry, dear. I'll grab another." She waved me off, rolling her eyes. "Forget it. Go to the store. Get something decent for dinner." I grabbed my keys, my mind already elsewhere. Every trip to the store was a chance to tighten the screws. I bought their favorite foods, greasy, heavy, sodium-packed, keeping them sluggish, their arrogance dulled. I documented every receipt, every dollar spent in Ryan's name, quietly pushing his credit lines to the limit. They didn't notice, too busy reveling in their supposed victory. But I wasn't done. One evening, I found Ryan's laptop open again, the screen glowing with a new search. How to take out a second life insurance policy without consent, common ways elderly family members disappear. My stomach churned, but my resolve hardened. I drove to the insurance office the next morning, confirming the second policy in my name, again tied to Ryan. I signed forms to gain full visibility, tucking the papers in my purse. They thought they were clever, but they'd underestimated me. Back home, Ryan and Elise were lounging, snack wrappers littering the table. "Rough day, Mom." Ryan asked, his charm forced. I smiled. "Just errands." Elise leaned in, her voice sweet again. "We were thinking another trip. Fairview National Park. Hiking, fresh air." I nearly laughed. Fairview, another remote forest where accidents happened. "Sounds perfect," I said, my voice warm. "I'll pack tonight." They exchanged glances, pleased with my compliance. But I wasn't their prey, I was their hunter. That night, I packed carefully, adding their sedatives to my backpack. The drive to Fairview was tense, Ryan's knuckles white, Elise's phone tapping frantic. At the trailhead, I played frail, wincing as I stretched. "We'll go slow," Ryan said, his voice too kind. Elise handed me another electrolyte drink, her smile sharp. "Stay hydrated, Helen." I took it, pretending to sip. During lunch, I offered them energy bars, laced with their own sedatives. They ate eagerly, not noticing the tampered wrappers. Soon, Ryan's head drooped, Elise swayed. "What did you do?" she gasped, collapsing. I stood, my voice calm. "Same thing you planned for me." Ryan begged, his voice weak. "Mom, please." I stepped over them, the forest quiet. You wanted me gone. Let's see how you fare. I walked away, the trail familiar under my feet, leaving them to the mercy of the woods. The forest trail stretched quiet under my feet, the crunch of leaves steady as I walked away from Ryan and Elise. The air was cool, sharp with the scent of pine, and the fading sun painted the sky in soft pinks and oranges. My heart should have been racing, but it wasn't. For the first time in years, I felt light, like I'd shed a weight I'd carried too long. I'd left them there, slumped in the dirt, their own sedatives turning their plan against them. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The forest didn't care about their schemes, and neither did I anymore. But as I reached the parking lot, my car waiting like a faithful friend, a faint sound stopped me cold. Help, please. It was weak, broken, carried on the breeze. My breath caught, the instinct to help stronger than my anger. I followed the voice, pushing through thorny bushes until I found him. A man my age, crumpled on the forest floor, his leg twisted at a sickening angle. His face was pale, sweat beading on his forehead, but his eyes held a spark of stubborn fight. Don't move, I said softly, kneeling beside him. You're hurt. He managed a crooked smile, his voice hoarse. No kidding. Been here a while. I called for help, my hand steady as I pressed a cloth to a cut on his head. Hang on, help's coming. He looked at me, his eyes searching. Name's Marcus. Marcus Grant. My heart skipped. Marcus Grant, the man behind Grant Enterprises, the company Ryan had chased for years, begging for deals that never came. Helen, I said simply, keeping my voice calm. You're lucky I heard you. He chuckled, wincing. Lucky's one way to put it. I stayed with him, talking to keep him calm, sharing small stories about the forest, the trails I'd walked after losing my dog Baxter. His eyes softened, like he saw the weight behind my words. When the paramedics arrived, I helped them lift him onto the stretcher, his hand brushing mine. Helen, he said, his voice firm despite the pain, you saved my life. I owe you. I shook my head, offering a faint smile. Just get better. But I followed the ambulance to the hospital, something pulling me there, a thread I couldn't explain. The waiting room was cold, the hum of machines and quiet footsteps filling the hours. When the doctor said Marcus was stable, I slipped into his room. He looked tired but alive, his eyes lighting up when he saw me. You stayed, he said, surprised. I shrugged, sitting beside him. Didn't feel right leaving you alone. We talked, the conversation easy, like we'd known each other longer than a day. He didn't pry, and I didn't share the mess with Ryan and Elise, but his quiet presence felt like a balm on a wound I'd ignored too long. When I left, the night sky was heavy with stars, and for the first time I felt a flicker of hope. Back home, the house was still, the silence no longer heavy, but peaceful. I poured tea, sat at the kitchen table, and let the quiet wrap around me. 3 days later, my phone rang. Ryan's name on the screen sent a chill through me, but I answered, my voice light. Hey, sweetheart. His voice was cracked, desperate. Mom, we're stuck at the trailhead. Car's dead. Phone's too. Please come get us. I sipped my tea, keeping my tone soft. Sounds rough. I'll be there. When I pulled up, they looked broken. Ryan's face gaunt, Elisa's hair tangled, her polish gone. They climbed into my car, silent, the air thick with their shame. At home, they collapsed on the couch, too weak to pretend. I cooked them dinner, thick soup, buttery bread, watching them eat like they hadn't in days. Thanks, Mom, Ryan muttered, his eyes down. Elise said nothing, her gaze distant. I smiled, my heart steady. They thought they'd slipped back into control, but I was still pulling the strings. The next days, their desperation grew, their act fraying. I kept cooking, kept the house warm, but my eyes were sharp. One morning, I found Ryan's laptop open again, an email draft glaring on the screen. Change trust beneficiary to Elise Monroe upon Helen Monroe's passing. My chest tightened, but I wasn't surprised. They weren't stopping, they were doubling down. I drove to the attorney's office, papers in hand, and crafted a fake house transfer document, every word designed to look real but mean nothing. Back home, I handed it to Ryan with a soft smile. A gift for your family. They tore through it, greedy, until Elise's eyes narrowed at the fine print. This isn't real, she hissed. Ryan's face paled. You lied to us. I tilted my head, my voice calm. You lied first. You didn't even read it. Ryan slammed the papers down. I'm your son. How could you do this? I leaned in, my eyes steady. You stopped being my son when you planned my funeral. Elise's face twisted. We let you stay here out of kindness. When are you moving out? I played hurt, my voice soft. Move out? Where would I go? I cook, I clean, I'm no trouble. They exchanged glances, Elise nodding reluctantly. Fine. Stay. You're useful. They thought they'd won, but I was still in the game. Their arrogance returned, Elise snapping orders, Ryan lounging like he owned the place. Water! Elise demanded one afternoon, her nails tapping the table. I set a glass down, ice clinking. She scowled. This is warm. Get another. I smiled tightly. Sorry, dear. I grabbed my keys, heading to the store, but every trip was a move in my plan. I bought heavy, rich foods, steaks, creamy sauces, keeping them slow, their greed blinding them. I logged every receipt in Ryan's name, pushing his credit deeper into the red. They didn't notice, too busy dreaming of my house. But one evening, Ryan's laptop betrayed them again. A new search. How to make an elderly family member disappear legally. My heart pounded, but my mind stayed clear. I drove to the insurance office the next day, confirming another policy in my name, tied to Ryan. I signed papers to take control, my hands steady. Back home, they were sprawled on the couch, oblivious. Tough day, Mom. Ryan asked, his charm forced. I smiled. Just busy. Elise leaned in, her voice sweet. Another trip, Helen. Fairview National Park. Fresh air, hiking. My blood ran cold, but I nodded. Sounds perfect. They thought they had me, but I packed my bag with their sedatives, ready to end this. The drive to Fairview was silent, their tension palpable. At the trailhead, I played weak, wincing as I stepped out. We'll go slow, Ryan said, his voice too kind. Elise handed me a drink, her smile sharp. Stay hydrated. I didn't drink. At lunch, I offered them energy bars laced with their own drugs. They ate fast, not noticing the tampered wrappers. Soon, they slumped, Ryan's eyes heavy, Elise's voice slurring. What did you do? She gasped. I stood, my voice calm. What you planned for me. Ryan begged, his voice weak. Mom, we're family. I stepped over them, the forest swallowing their pleas. You wanted me gone. Let's see if you make it. I walked away, the trail familiar, my heart steady. They'd set the trap, but I'd turned it on them. The forest trail faded behind me as I reached the parking lot, the crunch of gravel under my boots grounding me. The sky was a soft purple, the air cool against my skin. I climbed into my car, locked the doors, and sat there, hands resting on the wheel. I'd left Ryan and Elise in the woods, their own sedatives slowing them down. Their plan flipped against them. My heart didn't race. It felt steady, like a stone settled in my chest. I'd spent years carrying their weight, but now I was free. The silence was new, not heavy, but alive, like the house could finally breathe. But as I turned the key, a faint cry cut through the quiet. Help, please. My breath caught, and I froze, scanning the darkening trees. It wasn't Ryan or Elise. This was different, desperate. I followed the sound, pushing through thick bushes until I saw him. A man about my age, crumpled on the ground, his leg bent wrong, his face pale with pain. Don't move, I said, kneeling beside him, my voice soft but firm. His eyes met mine, tired but fighting. Been here a while, he rasped, forcing a weak smile. I called for help, pressing cloth to a cut on his forehead. my hand steady from years of patching up Ryan's messes. "You're okay now," I said, keeping him calm. "What's your name?" "Marcus," he said, wincing. "Marcus Grant." My heart skipped. Marcus Grant, the head of Grant Enterprises, the company Ryan had chased for years, always coming up short. "Helen," I said simply. "You're lucky I heard you." He chuckled, pain but warm. "Maybe you're the lucky one." I stayed with him, talking about small things, the forest, the stars, the way my dog Baxter used to chase leaves in my yard. It kept him grounded, and maybe me too. When the paramedics arrived, I helped them lift him onto the stretcher, his hand brushing mine. "Helen," he said, his voice firm despite the pain, "you saved my life. I owe you." I shook my head, offering a faint smile. "Just rest." But I followed the ambulance to the hospital, a pull I couldn't explain, tugging at me. The waiting room was cold, the hum of machines and soft footsteps filling the hours. When the doctor said Marcus was stable, I slipped into his room. He looked worn but alive, his eyes lighting up when he saw me. "You stayed," he said, surprised, his voice rough but kind. I shrugged, sitting beside him. "Didn't feel right leaving you alone." We talked, the words easy like we weren't strangers. He didn't ask about my life, and I didn't mention Ryan or Elise, but his quiet presence soothed something raw inside me. When I left, the night sky was bright with stars, and I felt a flicker of something I hadn't in years, hope. Back home, the house was still, the silence warm now, not suffocating. I poured tea, sat at the kitchen table, and let the quiet settle over me like a soft blanket. 3 days passed before my phone rang, Ryan's name flashing on the screen. My stomach tightened, but I answered, my voice light. "Hey, sweetheart." His voice was cracked, desperate. "Mom, we're stuck at the trailhead. Car's dead, phone's too. Please come get us." I sipped my tea, keeping my tone soft. "Sounds tough. I'll be there." When I pulled up, they looked like shadows, Ryan's face hollow, Elisa's hair messy, her polish gone. They climbed into my car, silent, the air thick with their defeat. At home, they collapsed on the couch, too weak to pretend. I cooked them dinner, thick soup, buttery rolls, watching them eat like they were starving. "Thanks, Mom," Ryan mumbled, his eyes down. Elise said nothing, her gaze far away. I smiled, my heart steady. They thought they were safe, but I was still in control. The next days, their desperation showed, their act crumbling. I kept cooking, kept the house warm, but my eyes were sharp. One morning, while folding laundry, I saw Ryan's laptop open again, an email draft glaring on the screen. Change. Change trust beneficiary to Elise Monroe upon Helen Monroe's passing. My chest tightened. They weren't stopping, they were planning my end. I drove to the attorney's office, crafting fake house transfer papers, every word a trap. Back home, I handed them to Ryan with a calm smile. "A gift for your family." They tore through the pages, greedy, until Elisa's eyes narrowed at the fine print. "This isn't real," she hissed. Ryan's face paled. "You lied." I tilted my head, my voice soft. "You lied first. You didn't read it." Ryan slammed the papers down. "I'm your son. How could you?" I leaned in, my eyes steady. "You stopped being my son when you planned my death." Elisa's face twisted. "We let you stay out of kindness. When are you moving out?" I played hurt, my voice soft. "Move out? Where would I go? I cook, clean, I'm no trouble." They exchanged glances, Elise nodding reluctantly. "Fine. Stay. You're useful." They thought they'd won, but I was still playing. Their arrogance returned, Elise snapping orders, Ryan lounging like he owned the place. "Water," Elise demanded one day, her nails tapping the table. I set down a glass, ice clinking. She scowled. "It's warm. Get another." I smiled tightly. "Sorry, dear." I went to the store, buying heavy foods, steaks, creamy sauces, keeping them slow, logging every dollar in Ryan's name, pushing his credit deeper into debt. They didn't notice. Too busy dreaming of my house. One evening, Ryan's laptop showed a new search: how to make an elderly family member disappear legally. My heart pounded, but I stayed calm. I confirmed another insurance policy in my name at the office, taking control. Back home, they were sprawled on the couch, oblivious. "Tough day, Mom?" Ryan asked, his charm forced. I smiled. "Just busy." Elise leaned in, her voice sweet. "Another trip, Helen." "Fairview." "Hiking." My blood ran cold, but I nodded. "Perfect." I packed their sedatives, ready to end it. The drive to Fairview was tense, their nerves showing. At the trailhead, I played weak, wincing. "We'll go slow," Ryan said, too kind. Elise handed me a drink, her smile sharp. I didn't drink. At lunch, I gave them tampered energy bars. They ate fast, collapsing soon after. "What did you do?" Elise gasped. I stood, my voice calm. "What you planned for me." Ryan begged, "Mom, we're family." I stepped over them. "You wanted me gone. Let's see if you survive." I walked away, the forest swallowing their pleas, my heart steady. They'd set the trap, but I'd won. The forest trail stretched behind me, the air thick with pine and the fading light of dusk. I reached my car, the quiet of the parking lot wrapping around me like a shield. I'd left Ryan and Elise in the woods, their own sedatives turning their scheme against them. My hands didn't shake as I turned the key. My heart felt steady, like I'd finally shed a weight I'd carried too long. I wasn't the soft, trusting mother they thought they could break. I was free, but just as I shifted into drive, a faint cry cut through the silence. "Help, please." My breath caught. It wasn't them, it was too raw, too desperate. I followed the sound, pushing through thorny bushes until I found a man crumpled on the ground, his leg twisted, face pale with pain. "Don't move," I said, kneeling beside him, my voice calm but firm. His eyes, tired but sharp, met mine. "Been here a bit," he rasped, forcing a weak smile. I called for help, pressing a cloth to a gash on his head. "What's your name?" "Marcus Grant," he said, wincing. My heart skipped. Marcus Grant, head of Grant Enterprises, the company Ryan had chased for years, always falling short. "Helen," I said, "you're lucky I heard you." He chuckled, pain but warm. "Or you're lucky." I stayed talking about small things, my dog Baxter, the trails I'd walked to feel strong again. When paramedics arrived, I helped lift him onto the stretcher. He grabbed my hand. "You saved my life, Helen. I owe you." I shook my head. "Just rest." But I followed the ambulance to the hospital, a pull I couldn't explain. In the waiting room, the hum of machines and soft footsteps filled the hours. When the doctor said Marcus was stable, I slipped into his room. His eyes lit up. "You stayed," he said, surprised. I shrugged. "Didn't feel right leaving you." We talked, the words easy like old friends. He didn't pry, and I didn't share the mess with Ryan and Elise. But his quiet presence soothed something broken in me. When I left, the stars were bright, and a flicker of hope warmed my chest. At home, the house felt lighter, the silence soft. I poured tea, sat at the table, and let the quiet settle. 3 days later, my phone rang, Ryan's name on the screen. My stomach tightened, but I answered, voice light. "Hey, sweetheart." His voice was raw. "Mom, we're stuck at the trailhead. Car's dead. Please come." I sipped my tea, keeping my tone soft. "I'll be there." They looked like ghosts when I pulled up, Ryan's face hollow, Elise's polish gone. They climbed in, silent, the air heavy with their shame. At home, they collapsed on the couch. I cooked them dinner, thick soup, buttery bread, watching them eat. "Thanks, Mom," Ryan muttered. Elise stayed quiet, her eyes distant. I smiled, my heart steady. They thought they were safe, but I was still in control. Their desperation grew, their act fraying. One morning, I saw Ryan's laptop open, an email draft glaring. "Change trust beneficiary to Elise upon Helen's passing." My chest tightened. They weren't stopping. I crafted fake house transfer papers with an attorney, handing them to Ryan with a smile. A gift. They tore through them, greedy, until Elise saw the fine print. Not legally binding. You lied, she hissed. Ryan's face paled. I'm your son. I leaned in, voice calm. You stopped being my son when you planned my death. Elise snapped. When are you moving out? I played hurt. Where would I go? I cooked clean. They relented, thinking they'd won. Elise grew bolder, barking orders. Water, she demanded one day. I set down a glass. She scowled. It's warm. I smiled. Sorry. I bought heavy foods, logging every dollar in Ryan's name, pushing his credit deeper into debt. One evening, his laptop showed a new search: how to make an elderly family member disappear. My heart pounded, but I stayed calm. I confirmed another insurance policy in my name, taking control. They suggested another trip, Fairview National Park. Perfect, I said, packing their sedatives. At the trailhead, I played weak. Elise handed me a tainted drink. I didn't sip. At lunch, I gave them tampered energy bars. They collapsed, gasping. What did you do? Elise slurred. I stood. What you planned for me. Ryan begged. Mom, we're family. I stepped over them. You wanted me gone. Let's see if you survive. I walked away, the forest swallowing their pleas. Back at the parking lot, I sat in my car, the quiet sinking in. But then a new sound, a soft knock on my window. My heart jumped. It was a park ranger, his face grim. Ma'am, we found something you need to see. I followed him, my stomach twisting, expecting Ryan or Elise. Instead, he led me to a small clearing where a worn collar lay in the dirt. Baxter's. My throat tightened, tears stinging my eyes. Found it near the ridge, the ranger said. Thought it might be yours. I clutched the collar, the last piece of my loyal friend, and nodded. It is. The ranger didn't ask more, but his eyes were kind. You okay to drive? I nodded, my voice gone. Back home, I held Baxter's collar, the weight of everything. Ryan's betrayal, Elise's greed, Baxter's loss, crashing over me. I cried, not for them, but for the years I'd given to someone who'd never cared. The next morning, I called 911, my voice trembling just enough. My son and his wife went hiking at Fairview. They haven't come back. I'm worried. The dispatcher promised a search team. Hours later, they called. They'd found them, alive but weak. At the hospital, Ryan looked gaunt, Elise sickly. Mom, where did you go? Ryan asked, confused. I played the part, showing a bandaged ankle. Sprained it. Rangers found me passed out. Elise's eyes narrowed. We blacked out. It doesn't make sense. I feigned shock. Why would I hurt you? I love you both. They sank back, defeated. I stayed by their side, fetching water, cooking, playing the devoted mother. But inside I was done. Their schemes had failed, and I was ready to end this. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and regret, the kind that lingers when you've seen too much of someone's true colors. Ryan and Elise lay in their beds, pale and weak, their eyes heavy with the weight of their failed plan. I sat between them, folding a blanket with care, my face soft but my heart cold. They thought they'd slipped back into my good graces, but I was done playing the fool. You scared me, I said, my voice trembling just enough to sell it. Ryan's eyes flicked to me, confused. Mom, what happened out there? I lifted my pant leg, showing a fake ankle brace, twisted it on the trail. Woke up here. I was so worried about you two. Elise's lips tightened, suspicion flickering, but she was too tired to push. We blacked out, she muttered. Doesn't add up. I widened my eyes, feigning hurt. You think I'd do something to you? I love you. Ryan sank back, his face gray. Forget it, he mumbled. I nodded, tucking the blanket around him, my smile gentle, but my mind sharp. They thought they were safe, but I was still pulling the strings. Back home, they shuffled in, weak as kittens, collapsing onto the couch. I cooked their favorite meals, creamy soups, buttery potatoes, watching them eat like they hadn't in days. "Thanks, Mom," Ryan said, his voice small. Elise barely looked at me, her eyes distant, her polish gone. I smiled, my heart steady. Every bite they took was part of my plan, keeping them slow, their greed blinding them. Days passed, their desperation growing, their act crumbling. One afternoon, while tidying the living room, I spotted Ryan's laptop open again. My stomach twisted as I read the screen. How to legally remove someone from a trust after death. My breath caught, but I wasn't surprised. They weren't stopping, they were planning my end, still. I drove to the attorney's office, crafting another set of fake papers, this time for the trust. Back home, I handed them to Ryan with a soft smile. "For your future," I said. Their eyes lit up, tearing through the pages until Elise froze, reading the fine print. Non-binding draft. "You tricked us again," she hissed, her voice sharp. Ryan's face drained. "Mom, why?" I leaned in, my voice calm. "You planned to erase me. I just beat you to it." Elise slammed the papers down. "Get out, Helen. This is our house." I played hurt, my voice soft. "Where would I go? I cook, I clean, I'm no trouble." Ryan's eyes darted, but Elise nodded. "Fine. Stay. You're useful." They thought they'd won, but I was still in control. Elise grew bolder, snapping orders like I was a servant. "Coffee!" she barked one morning, her nails tapping the table. I set down a mug, steam curling. She scowled. "It's cold." I smiled. "Sorry, dear." I went to the store, buying rich food, steaks, heavy sauces, logging every dollar in Ryan's name, pushing his credit deeper into the red. They didn't notice, too busy dreaming of my house. One evening, I found Ryan's laptop open again, a new search. Fast ways to claim an estate after a death. My heart pounded, but I stayed calm. I confirmed another insurance policy in my name, taking control. They suggested another trip, Fairview again. "Perfect," I said, packing their sedatives. At the trailhead, I played weak, wincing. Elise handed me a tainted drink, her smile sharp. I didn't sip. At lunch, I gave them tampered energy bars. They collapsed, gasping. "What did you do?" Elise slurred. I stood, my voice cold. "What you planned for me." Ryan begged, "Mom, please." I stepped over them. "You wanted me gone. Let's see if you make it." I walked away, the forest swallowing their pleas. Back home, I sat with Baxter's collar, the grief hitting hard. I'd lost so much. Years, trust, my dog, but I wasn't losing myself. 3 days later, I called 911, my voice shaky. My son and his wife, they went hiking at Fairview. They're not back. The search team found them, weak but alive. At the hospital, they looked broken. "Mom, where were you?" Ryan asked. I showed my fake brace. Rangers found me passed out. Elise's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing. I stayed by their side, cooking, caring, playing the part. But when they were discharged, I was ready to end it. Ryan went back to work, trying to act strong. But his phone rang that afternoon, his voice frantic. "Mom, they fired me. My accounts are frozen." I patted his hand, my voice soft. "Rough day, sweetheart." His eyes blazed. "Why would they do this?" I smiled. "Don't worry. I'll take care of you." His suspicion grew, but greed won. "Maybe a vacation," I suggested. "Clear your heads." Elise perked up. "We deserve a break." I booked them a luxury trip to the Florida Keys, all on Ryan's credit. While they were gone, I cleared the house. Movers took their things to charity, valuables sold, locks changed. When they returned, only bills waited, tied to Ryan's name. His voice shook on the phone. "You sent me bills." I sipped my tea. "It's your money now, Ryan." He sputtered. "I'm your son." I chuckled. "Funny how you remember that now." I hung up, the house quiet, my heart calm. That night, the doorbell rang, loud and desperate. Ryan pounded the door. Mom, open up. Elise's voice cut through. What kind of mother does this? I cracked the door, chain on. What's wrong? Ryan shoved papers through. The deed. You signed it. I flipped through, smiling. Read the fine print. Elise's eyes widened. You tricked us. I nodded. You tricked yourselves. Ryan's voice broke. I'm your son. I pulled out a thicker envelope, handing it over. Read this. His hands shook as he tore it open. Paternity test results. 0% match to Helen Monroe. His face crumpled. No, you're lying. I stepped onto the porch, my voice steady. I'm not your mother. Your father had you with another woman. I raised you, gave you everything, and you gave me nothing but lies. Tears welled in his eyes, but they were selfish, not sorry. Elise pulled him back, her face pale. I closed the door, the deadbolt clicking. The house was mine again, and so was my peace. The house felt like mine again, the quiet settling over me like a warm blanket. I stood in the kitchen, sunlight streaming through the window, painting the counters gold. The air smelled of coffee and fresh herbs from my garden. No trace of Ryan or Elise's greedy presence. I'd locked them out physically, emotionally, and the relief was so deep it almost hurt. But the weight of Baxter's collar, still tucked in my drawer, lingered, a reminder of what I'd lost to their betrayal. I sipped my coffee, letting the silence sink in when the doorbell rang. Soft but deliberate. My heart skipped, expecting Ryan's desperate pounding, but it wasn't him. I opened the door to find a plain envelope on the porch, no return address, just my name in neat handwriting. Inside was a handwritten note from Marcus Grant, the man I'd saved in the forest. Helen, I owe you more than words can say. Coffee tomorrow? No pressure. Marcus. I smiled, the warmth in my chest unfamiliar, but welcome. The next morning, I met Marcus at a small cafe, its windows fogged from the autumn chill. He looked better, his legs still in a brace, but his eyes bright. You came, he said, his voice warm, like he hadn't expected it. I shrugged, stirring my coffee. You asked. We talked easily about the town, the crisp air, the way the leaves turned gold overnight. He didn't pry, and I didn't offer the mess of my past, but his quiet presence felt like a steady hand on my shoulder. You look lighter, he said, his eyes crinkling. I smiled faintly. First time in years. He nodded, like he understood more than I'd said. When we parted, he squeezed my hand gently. Call if you need me, Helen. I nodded, the flicker of hope growing. Back home, the phone rang, shattering the quiet. Ryan's name flashed on the screen, and my stomach tightened. I answered, voice soft. What is it, Ryan? His voice was raw, broken. Mom, I'm sorry. I lost everything, my job, Elise, my name. I'm ruined. I leaned against the counter, tracing the edge of my mug. I see. He laughed bitterly. Of course you do. You always see everything. I stayed silent, letting him unravel. You always fix things, he said, his voice cracking. You saved me, over and over. I need you now. I closed my eyes, remembering the boy who'd clung to my hand, the boy I'd raised despite the truth. You're not a child anymore, I said softly. I'm not your safety net. He went quiet, then whispered, I deserve that. I ended the call, my heart steady. I wasn't his mother, not by blood, but I'd given him everything, love, a home, second chances. He'd thrown it away. The next day, I found another envelope under my door, Ryan's messy handwriting. Mom, I'm sorry. I screwed up. I'm leaving town, starting over. You won't hear from me again. I folded the note, tucking it away with Baxter's collar. I didn't cry. I felt closure, not pain. Days later, Marcus showed up with bagels and coffee, his smile easy. We sat on my porch, the air crisp, the world quiet. You look at peace, he said. I nodded, slicing a bagel. Maybe I am. He didn't press, just sat with me, the silence comfortable. But life wasn't done with surprises. That afternoon, a thick envelope arrived, Grant Enterprises logo embossed on it. Inside were documents, memos, financial reports, Ryan's name erased from every project, his reputation gone. I didn't ask how it happened. I didn't need to. Marcus never mentioned it, but I knew. I tucked the papers away, my heart calm. The next morning, the doorbell rang again, softer this time. Ryan stood there, eyes red, shoulders slumped. "Mom," he said, his voice small. I took another test. "It's true, isn't it? You're not my mother." I nodded, the weight of years in that gesture. He swallowed hard. "You raised me. That counts, right?" I sipped my coffee, letting the silence stretch. "Does it?" He flinched, his voice desperate. "You can't abandon me." I tilted my head. "Isn't that what you tried to do in the woods?" His eyes dropped, guilt flashing. A car pulled up, Elise in the passenger seat, her face pale, her glare sharp. "Come on, Ryan," she called, her voice cold. He hesitated, then held out a trembling hand. "Can we talk?" I considered it, the old me wanting to fix him, but that woman was gone. "We've talked enough," I said, closing the door. The deadbolt clicked, final and sure. I watched them drive away, Elise's glare fading into the distance. The house was quiet again, and I felt no ache, only peace. That evening, Marcus called, his voice warm. "Dinner Friday?" "Just dinner." I smiled, my heart light. "See you then." I stood on the porch, the stars bright above, the air cool against my skin. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for the next betrayal. I was ready for whatever came next, and it felt like freedom. The autumn air carried a crisp edge, the kind that makes you feel alive. I stood on my porch, a mug of tea warming my hands, watching the leaves drift across the yard. The house was mine again, quiet, clean, free of Ryan and Elisa's schemes. Their betrayal had cut deep, but it had also set me free. I wasn't the woman who'd spent years fixing their messes, believing love could mend what was broken. I was Helen now, just Helen, and that was enough. The herb garden by the fence bloomed wild, lavender, rosemary, mint stretching toward the sun. I'd tended it through the chaos, and it thrived just like me. Marcus had become a steady part of my days, not pushing, just there, coffee on the porch, walks along the river, his quiet presence filling spaces I hadn't realized were empty. That morning, he dropped off a book, a worn copy of a novel I'd mentioned liking. "Thought you'd enjoy this," he said, his smile soft. I took it, my fingers brushing his. "You're too good to me." He chuckled. "You deserve good, Helen." Later, as I sat in the garden, a final envelope arrived, no return address, Ryan's handwriting jagged across it. My heart didn't race. I opened it calmly. "Mom, I'm starting over. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I'm sorry for everything." I read it once, then tucked it away with Baxter's collar. No anger, no tears, just closure. Ryan had chosen his path, and I'd chosen mine. That evening, Marcus called, his voice warm through the phone. "Dinner tomorrow? Somewhere quiet." I smiled, watching the sunset paint the sky pink. "I'd like that." We ate at a small diner, the kind with checkered tablecloths and coffee that never stopped coming. Over pie, he asked, "You ever think about love again, Helen?" I paused, the question soft but heavy. I thought of Ryan's betrayal, the years I'd poured into someone who saw me as a tool. Then I looked at Marcus, his steady eyes, his quiet strength. "Maybe," I said, my voice sure. "Maybe I already am." He smiled, not pressing, just letting the moment sit. Driving home, the city lights glowed soft, and I felt something new. Peace, not just from surviving, but from living. The house welcomed me back, its walls free of ghosts. I stood on the porch, the stars bright above, and realized I wasn't waiting for the next betrayal. I was ready for what came next, and it felt like mine. The moral was simple. Love isn't about losing yourself. It's about choosing who you give your heart to, starting with you. Moral lesson. Love doesn't mean sacrificing yourself. True strength comes from choosing your own worth, setting boundaries, and building a life that's yours, not someone else's to take. The morning sun spilled through my kitchen window, warming the hardwood floor. I stood at the counter, slicing apples for a pie, the rhythm of the knife steadying my thoughts. The house was quiet, no echoes of Ryan's demands or Elise's sharp voice. I'd locked them out, their betrayal sealed behind a closed door. Baxter's collar sat in a drawer, a quiet reminder of what they'd taken. But I wasn't grieving anymore. I was building something new. The phone rang, Marcus's name on the screen. "Dinner's still on?" he asked, his voice warm. I smiled, my heart lighter than it had been in years. Wouldn't miss it. That evening, I slipped into a simple navy dress, nothing fancy, just enough to feel like me again. Marcus picked me up, his car understated, but sleek like him. We drove to a cozy restaurant by the river, its brick walls glowing under soft lights. Over dinner, we talked books, music, the small things that make life feel full. "What's next for you, Helen?" he asked, his eyes steady. I swirled my water glass, the question settling softly. "I'm done planning for others," I said. "I'm figuring out what I want." He nodded, his smile quiet but sure. "You deserve that." Driving home, the city lights blurred past, and for once, I wasn't bracing for the next blow. Marcus walked me to my door, hands in his pockets. "Call me," he said, his voice gentle. "Maybe I will," I replied, meaning it. The next day, an envelope arrived, no return address, Ryan's handwriting scrawled across it. My stomach tightened, but I opened it. "Mom, I'm gone. I messed up everything. I'm sorry." I folded the note, tucking it away. No tears came, just a calm finality. I'd given him everything, and he'd chosen to throw it away. Later, Marcus showed up with coffee, his smile easy. We sat on the porch, the air crisp, the herb garden blooming nearby. "You look different," he said. "Lighter." I nodded, sipping my coffee. "I'm learning to live for me." He didn't push, just sat with me, the silence comfortable. The weeks that followed felt like a gift. I tended my garden, walked the neighborhood trails, and let the quiet fill the spaces Ryan and Elise had left. Marcus became a steady presence. Coffee here, a walk there, no pressure, just ease. For the first time, I wasn't carrying someone else's weight. I was free, and the moral was clear. Love doesn't mean losing yourself. Choosing me wasn't selfish, it was survival.